In life, we encounter people every day, all of whom have stories to share. We rarely take the time to ask people their personal stories, many of which will touch, move, and inspire us in some way. Matt has a passion for making authentic connections and learning about people from all walks of life. He has lived a life of giving back to the community and making a difference in people's lives. Are you ready to meet fascinating people and hear some inspiring stories? The Matt Hilton Show will introduce you to a world of possibilities you never knew existed. Sit back, be present, and enjoy. Here's your host, Matt Hilton.
Hi everyone, this is Matt Hilton. You're watching The Matt Hilton Show. Today's guest is Lexie Okeke. Lexie and I went to Garland High School together, and she is going to be sharing some stories with us, one of which is about how she overcame one of her greatest adversities in life. Stay tuned after this message from our sponsor.
Inspired, experienced, customer-focused. Find a mortgage that fits your needs with Maria Leach at First United Bank Mortgage, specializing in construction and closing all types of loans, including jumbo, portfolio, conventional, FHA, and VA. A tenured team, outstanding service, competitive programs. Finance your dreams with Maria Leach at First United Bank Mortgage. mleach.firstunitedteam.com, 214-316-7915, mleach@firstunitedbank.com. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Well, Lexie, I'm excited for you to be here today. Thanks for coming in, and you are one of my first guests on this video podcast, and I just cannot think of a better person to have here as a fascinating person with an inspiring story. And so my audience does not know you very well. I know you from high school. We went to high school together, and you're just a fascinating person to me back then. One thing I do remember about you particularly, and you're doing it now, is your beautiful smile. So very engaging, and you have a quality about making someone feel like they are the only person in the room. And so I really appreciate that about you. So my audience doesn't know anything about you unless they've done some research of some sort. So would you tell the audience who you are in a couple of minutes, and then give us 3 words that would describe who Lexie is?
Absolutely. And before I do all that, I want to say I'm excited to be here, Matt. Excited to be with you and just the journey you're starting on, not just with podcasts, but nonprofit and just giving back. I think to our world, it's something that's always so necessary and needed. My name is Lexie Okeke, and I am, as far as work, I'm the Director of Community Engagement for the AT&T Byron Nelson and the Salesmanship Club. I also occasionally do consulting with nonprofits, and I do that under my company heading of Be the Delta. And that particular phrase right there, be the Delta, actually kind of encapsulates who I am. So I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to say those are my 3 words, be Delta. Anyone who's a math nerd out there knows that Delta is a Greek letter, and it means change. So be the Delta is another way of saying be the change. And that really speaks to not only how I was raised and my family legacy of giving back to our community, but it really speaks to the work that I do. That's why I'm in the nonprofit space. I do community engagement. I connect these big brands or big ideas to the people that are in the communities. They want to be engaged. They want to see their community transformed for the better, and they want to be a part of that. And so that's the kind of person that I connect with.
Great. So can you go a little deeper with that? And I'm curious as to what that looks like as an example, like getting in a community and engaging the community with a corporate entity. Like, how does that even work?
Absolutely. And it's really interesting because I do community engagement for the AT&T Byron Nelson, which is the Dallas stop of the PGA Tour. And so it looks different from, say, if you are a direct services nonprofit, whether it's a food bank or shelter, homeless shelter, or whatever. Community engagement for us looks a little bit different. But what we do is around the footprint of the golf course, and certainly in McKinney and Collin County, there are people that are very familiar with the golf tournament, but not as much familiar with our beneficiary, which is Momentous Institute. And so I connect people. I help them to understand Salesmanship Club of Dallas, 100-year-old organization, puts on the AT&T Byron Nelson, Dallas top of the PGA Tour, benefiting Momentous Institute, which is all about the social and emotional health of children and families. And so I bring that message out to whether it's a community group like a Kiwanis Club, or different nonprofits in the community. And then I also talk about the ways that they can engage or benefit from the tournament. And so that looks like some of our vendors do things similar to at high school football games where you'll have an organization staffing the concession stand and they'll get a percentage of the proceeds. We bring in 1,000 volunteers every year.
Wow.
And so the recruiting of that is quite a heavy load, but bringing in all of those people that are interested in being a part of the tournament, training them up, and then getting them to be, our messengers of hospitality and fun at the tournament. And so all of that is kind of what I do, and some other stuff.
Yeah. So be the Delta. When you said that, I thought you were going to say be the change. That was, it's attributed to a certain individual, some quote. What is that quote that I'm trying to come up with?
Oh gosh. I'm having a brain. He's Indian.
Yes, Mahatma Gandhi, maybe?
Yes, Gandhi. Thank you. That was a trick question. You knew
it was.
I knew the answer. I couldn't think of it. Yes, Mahatma Gandhi, be the change you wish to see in the world.
Yeah.
And so, my grandmother, even before we had words like social impact or all these other things, was all about really being the change in her community. She was the president of her missions group, and I would see her on the phone, collecting clothes, getting food for families that need it, doing all sorts of things. And so, in seeing that as a little girl growing up, like all throughout my life, and then seeing my mom, she would bring us to all sorts of community events to volunteer. It just became a part of my life and kind of a part of the message, not just for work, but really everything that I live and breathe.
Yeah. So I saw something on your website in an interview that you did about the Pear Orchard.
Yes.
What is the Pear Orchard?
So my grandmother, my grandparents, my family is from Beaumont, Texas. And the Pear Orchard, here in Dallas, we've got all the different suburbs.
Right.
And it would be like in Garland if North Garland actually had kind of a community name that everybody called it. And that's the Pear Orchard. The people that live in that part of Beaumont know exactly where it is. But I would say even to this day, there are people in Beaumont that have no idea what the Pear Orchard is. But it was our little section of Beaumont.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So those people that are out there that are from Beaumont, you know exactly what she's talking about.
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So tell me a little more about Be the Change and what you do with that. Like as far as I know you said you consult with nonprofits as part of that. So what gives you fulfillment out of doing that, and what was the impetus for starting that organization?
Absolutely. I'll start with your second question, the impetus. So I have had almost 20-year career in the nonprofit space, and I've been very fortunate. I started off working at the Dallas Regional Chamber. And that provided so many experiences that really still inform my career to this day, whether it's, connecting deeply in the Dallas business community. The type of person that works at the chamber is very passionate about nonprofits, business, all of that, and then very skilled at what they do. And so those relationships actually still, really are deep and important to me even to this day. And so what happened is I left the chamber, went to work for some other nonprofits, and then eventually came to a point in my career where I knew I wanted to leave the nonprofit I was at, but wasn't quite sure where I would go next. And anyone at that point in their career knows they start to piece together, okay, this is what I want to do, this is what I don't want to do. And you start to create kind of this optimal opportunity in your mind of what you would want to do next.
Right.
And so I was talking to someone who was kind of a mentor to me, and they were like, it sounds like you probably need to start something on your own. That sounds like being an entrepreneur. And so that I was like, okay, I mean, that wasn't in my dream plan or whatever, but I was like, let's try it. And I was incredibly fortunate that I left that job, started my consulting, and within a month had a client that replaced my income that I just left. And so incredibly fortunate. And then added a few others. Any entrepreneur will tell you it's highly stressful, but it has so many rewards. And so I'm incredibly thankful during that time. I had clients like the Dallas Black Chamber, the city of Garland, and I partnered on a couple of events for nonprofits in Garland. And several others, just to be able to influence and work with those nonprofits. My specialty is communications, along with some fundraising, particularly designing events that really align with what their values and mission are. And then, of course, there's an element of community engagement that I'll always do. But I tell folks, even in my consulting work, it's kind of infused in the work. So I don't necessarily, as a consultant, just focus on community engagement. I'm typically on the partnership development, fundraising, event design side of things. So.
Right. Okay.
But I don't do that. I actually don't do that much anymore. Somehow the tournament tends to take like all of my time.
So when do you start planning for the next year? Is it once this one is, when this one ends?
Sure. So when I came on board with the tournament, John Drago, the tournament director, said that it's about a 1.5 year process for the tournament.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so it is, I tell folks, it's one thing to actually go and enjoy and, see all the sights and sounds of professional golf. It's a whole other thing to be on the planning side. It is an absolute beast of an event. One of the operations things that you'll see this year is we're building 40, or maybe 40 or 44 hospitality venues on the course. Okay. Mind you, we build this and then we tear it down each year.
Oh.
So it's designed, built, and then torn down every year. At one point during the tournament, we'll have about 50 buses running to bring all of our patrons to the course. And we'll have 30 to 40,000 people, out on course during the day. We just had a press release go out today talking about our field. We've got like the number 1, number 2 golfer. Our field is killer this year. Awesome. And all of that just requires a lot of work. So yeah, it's more than just a year of planning.
Yeah. No, I can only imagine. Yeah. I mean, just all the little pieces that have to work and getting the commitments and people doing what they say they're going to do doesn't always happen. So
absolutely,
I totally get that.
Getting everybody fed, make sure they have good beer and tequila or whatever. Yes, all of that, all the things.
What is your biggest fear?
That's a good question. You almost made me stutter. So 7 years ago, I had a stroke, very serious health challenge. My biggest fear, because of that, and obviously, talking to me for any length of time, people see that I've recovered very well from that, but that my life will be cut short. I enjoy living. I enjoy people. I enjoy doing what I do. I want to do it as long as I can. And so, kind of navigating life well is important to me. So making the decisions that will not only that it won't feed into that fear, but it'll also ensure that I have a long, healthy life is important. So,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was a deep
answer. That was a deep answer to my question. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you have recovered, and you've recovered remarkably well.
Yeah. And it was I tell people it was a serious stroke because in looking at me and talking to me, you don't necessarily see that. But I had to learn how to walk again. I had to learn how to talk again. I had, I tell folks the brain is a sophisticated, incredible thing. And there were disconnects between my eyesight and my brain. And so having to read, having to do all these things really took effort. I'm so thankful I had a support system that really got me to where you see me now.
Right.
But yeah.
Okay, so outside of your support system,
Mm-hmm.
there's something internally too. I was talking to somebody about this, something similar yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
There's something internally too that gets you to a point where you can continue on,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, it's you motivate yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? People can inspire you, but you have to be motivated.
Absolutely.
So, what motivated you to recover and to get back to where, and even maybe even healthier than where you were before?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So there are a couple of things, and I can't divorce the fact that I have this incredible support system from my recovery. Like, my support system absolutely was so critical and pivotal to my recovery. But I remember there was a moment where I was absolutely gripped by fear. In fact, after my stroke, I had my first panic attack. And it was incredibly, it's debilitating, and you don't know what's happening. And it was a hard thing for me to wrap my head around, because I've always presented as a very strong, very capable, very independent person. And so I had a conversation with my friend, speaking of my support system, Gina, talking about this incredible fear that was really starting to cripple me. And she had just heard a message from another dear friend of hers about sometimes you've got to do it afraid. And it so struck me, because it was one of those things we talk about, having courage, thugging it out, gutting it up, all these other things. But the reality is sometimes that feeling of courage doesn't supersede or become bigger than the fear that you're dealing with. And that's where I was at. Like, I still had the fear, and no amount of motivation was going to change that. But somehow that phrase of sometimes you've got to do it afraid kind of settled me and said, it's not that you accept the fear, but you say, okay, in the same way that, if you're at a stoplight and you've got to go, you kind of have to trust some things around you are going to be okay. That's the exact same way I kind of approach, even when I have to still have fear as I do something. So I had scheduled an event for a client that was happening about 3 months after my recovery. So I was about a month in the hospital. I didn't want the event canceled because it was very important to me. And I needed friends to kind of come in and support. And I didn't want to come off as unprofessional, incapable, all this other stuff. So it was actually very fortuitous that I had this event, had to do some things afraid, and then really kind of settled into recovery and focus on what that would look like for me.
And what I'm hearing you say too, and thank you for sharing that, is that in times like that, it's not always you being strong and you can do it by yourself, because I see that in me, right? You have to ask for help, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm very fortunate that people love me enough to, even when I didn't have the words to articulate that I needed help, that they, stepped in and helped. Because even while I was having the panic attack, you don't know that you're having a panic attack. For me, I was like, get away, get away, get away. But I had people at least, step back, because that's what I needed in that moment, but not step so far away that they weren't there to help and support and help to identify what was going on. Also, I'm an introvert. I may not come across that way right now.
Don't let her fool you.
No, trust. I tell people, I try to help people understand I'm an introvert. So I get my energy by being alone, by being quiet. And what that meant for me as a young girl, I didn't always necessarily have the words to articulate my emotions. I'm just coming into that vocabulary later in life, in my 30s and 40s. And so part of having the support system is giving you the words or asking the questions that then help you to articulate. And that's kind of some of the things that have happened for me post-stroke. Pre-stroke Lexie, even though people may be like, oh, she's fun, she's wonderful, so radically different from post-stroke Lexie.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And see, I would never have known until this moment that you were an introvert. I'm an extroverted introvert.
Oh, yeah.
Like I can go and be social, but there are times that I have to go to be alone to recharge.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I don't know if any of you can identify that, but it's I have to recharge from time to time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I recharge a lot. I tell folks because I do it and nobody sees it. And so they're like, they don't see me being introvert, but I'm like, I'm doing my introvert thing.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. I'll do what I need to do and it'll take care of me. And then I'll go back out there and be fabulous and fun and interesting.
And you are fabulous and fascinating and interesting. Most definitely. So going back to what you said about, creating some events with Garland, so we both are graduates of Garland High School.
The
Go
original.
Owls. Woohoo!
The original.
That's right. So was there some nostalgia involved with the city of Garland? Was it just a door that opened up and it happened to be the city of Garland? Did you pursue, how did that come about?
So I am very, in fact, if you go on my website, bethedelta.net, you'll see that I'm very much so believe in being values aligned. And so even with my business, I wanted to be values aligned. Saying that meaning giving to my community is very important to me. So when I started this business, I happened to have a friend who worked for the city of Garland in their community affairs area. And I was like, hey, I'm starting my nonprofit. If there's anything you guys need, let me know. Here to support, here to help. And what she ended up talking about was there were some nonprofits in Garland that kind of really needed that support or help, or it was consulting, but really that help around who are they, what are their values, mission statement, and kind of really getting that solidified, and then doing work in really thoughtful and intentional ways in the city. And so we were able to create, actually, it was a 6-month training program for a cohort of nonprofits based off of some of the needs she had identified. So it was a combination of me just saying, I've got this skill, I'm willing to help, and then connecting with the people, that could identify a place for me to provide it. So, yeah.
Wow. I'm learning so much more about Lexie today that I didn't know. Because, we went to the same school, we were in some of the same classes, right? And we both are community engaging, right? So we engage with people and connect people, and I just think that's fascinating in and of itself to me, that we are both products of the same class and same school, and
well, and it's interesting because I don't want to leave this too quickly. I've had the fortune of going back to Garland a couple of times because both of my nieces graduated from Garland High School, and if you remember, the motto there is go forth to serve.
Wow. Yes.
And so it is like embedded within the culture. And I think we were both in Key Club, right? Yep. There is a culture of service even within the school. And I would say, I rep Garland pretty hard. I think Garland is fantastic.
Right.
I think even within the culture of the city, there is a real service orientation. So it's not surprising that me, you, and there are others, that really do work or volunteer for nonprofits.
Yeah, for sure.
We believe in it.
Yeah, and to that point, I think it's interesting. I have more high school connections and relationships to this day than college. I don't keep up with very many people that I graduated from college from. But high school, wow, yeah.
Now, see, some of my college friends are, so I got to say something, because they'll watch this. My college friends, I have the best, most amazing college friends. Yeah. But my high school friends, which is, you experienced it, they can get a yes out of me so easy, and it is not always that easy. I'm an introvert and I'm busy.
Right.
But we had an incredible high school experience.
Yeah.
And so I'm forever thankful for that.
Yeah, for sure. And she's right. All I had to do was ask, and she's here. So I really appreciate it, because I know you're in the midst of a lot going on right now.
Yeah, we are.
So who is your hero? If you had to look at your life, who is the most influential person and hero to you?
I would have to say it's my grandmother. My grandmother, my mom, and my siblings. If I had to put a group together, my grandmother is the person that I literally have modeled my career after. She was, and mind you, so she was a stay-at-home mom until in her 50s or 60s. And then she ended up working for the Beaumont State Center, which worked with adults with learning differences. And she ended up actually opening an in-home daycare for adults with learning differences. So think of that. When I'm in elementary and middle school,
Right.
I am being exposed to adults with learning differences and how to love, care, respect for those types of individuals. And so it's really transformative in my life and how I connect with everyone. And then she was president of her missions group at church. And so I would see her get up and speak. And when I tell you, it would be a pin drop when my grandmother would speak. She was like, why do we have a pastor when Miss Bessie Williams could get up and speak every Sunday and it would rock the house? So anyway, all the things that she brought to the table as far as being a leader in her family, a leader in her community, are what I've modeled my career after. My mom is the exact same way. Single mom raising 4 very different, very strong children. My brother graduated from SMU Hall of Fame football career in the Canadian Football League. My other brother just made managing director in his company, and he does financial investments and some other things. My sister is a stay-at-home mom, and she's absolutely killing it raising my youngest niece, and my sister is also an actress. And so those are the types of people that I get to see and model my life after, not just because of what their accomplishments, but how they connect with people, how they care for people. And so those are the people that are really my heroes. I'm very blessed in my siblings. I tell folks, because people ask, how is it that you do, all these interviews and you feel comfortable with it? I grew up seeing my brother do interviews. And so it's kind of, you get the training via somebody else vicariously. So those are my heroes.
Oh, that's fantastic. And what I'm hearing you say too, Lexie, is it starts at home. Right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I believe so, because there are other ways to do it. And if you look at my life, you'll know I've got incredible friends. So I've got the family that was by birth and the family that I created. But I think there is something to be said about teaching within your home, whether it's your kids or your nieces, nephews, because I don't have any children, how to connect with people, how to care for people, how to love people, and to do it well. Is something that's so important. And it's one of the reasons why even, our beneficiary is Momentous Institute. And we do therapeutic services and mental health support. And we talk about this idea of social emotional health, which is being able to manage your emotions, your reactions, and your relationships. And so we, even in my business life, talk all the time about equipping children to be able to do that, manage their emotions, their reactions, and their relationships. And if they can do that on top of all the school stuff that they'll learn, they'll be set for life as an adult.
Yeah.
So, it does. It starts at home.
Do you have any a story of a child that benefited from the institute, like, and how they have they've been the change? Have you seen kind of maybe somebody that comes to mind that
Absolutely, absolutely.
You know what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, absolutely. Because one of the cool things about our work is, so the Salesmanship Club, along with all of the volunteer work and work that they do, they also are reading buddies to our students at Momentous. So one arm of Momentous is a school in North Oak Cliff, 248 children, 3 years old to 5th grade. Each of our kids in the school has a reading buddy. That reading buddy meets with their child 30 minutes every week. I have a reading buddy. His name is Solo. I've had him since he was in PK4.
Okay.
He is now in the 4th grade. So when you ask me that question, have I seen a child? I'm absolutely, unequivocally. The wonderful thing about our kiddos, they come from all over that North Oak Cliff area. Solo is Hispanic, and his family speaks Spanish in the home. He's completely bilingual. And the wonderful thing about being a reading buddy, it's about reading to a child, and there's all sorts of, reports or literature on why you should read to a child regularly. But it's also about the relational aspect, them having another safe adult that they can then start to form a relationship with, connect with, test out, like what questions do you ask somebody on a week-to-week basis that it's not family, but you're trying to get to know,
Right.
Really flexing that relationship building arm. And so to see him go from a super, super shy, introverted 3-year-old to now, we meet every Tuesday. It's like, so how was your weekend, Miss Okeke? What did you do? How's Lily? That's my dog. When I go on vacation or he goes on vacation, he'll come back with stories, and all sorts of things. So seeing them do that progression, any parent can talk to that, but it's so interesting to see a child learn how to develop relationships with someone they don't know. Because that's a different type of skill than with a parent or, someone else that they see on a regular basis. It's transformative. It really, really is. And it informs how they show up in school and how they, of course, show up with their peers.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an amazing process when you look at people through the lens of they're another human and just see them as that.
Yeah.
And the relationship that buds from that. And there's so many benefits there.
There are.
For sure.
There are. So I look forward to seeing them continue to develop.
Most definitely. So got another question for you, and then I'm going to wrap it up with the final one. So as far as through your life, I want you to reflect for a minute.
Okay.
Is there anything that you would never do again?
Yes.
Okay. So what is that and why? Why would you never do this one thing again?
I ran a half marathon once.
She'll never do that again.
Let me talk to Miss. I will never. So I'm sorry. That's
so tell
what
me more about
came to mind. That's what immediately came. And this was actually pre-stroke. I've actually gotten more physically active post-stroke. But before my stroke, a friend challenged me. We were, doing some regular exercise things together. It's like, do a half marathon. So we did the Dallas half marathon. It was one of the coldest. So I want to say it was like 20 degrees. And the corrals were at, where did the Mavericks play? American Airlines Center. And you have to get there early because there's so many thousands of people. So you're standing in 20-degree weather for like an hour and a half.
Right.
And then you start this half marathon that's hella long. Sorry. And I remember, I was only 5 miles in, and I was like, what in the entire hell are we doing? This is not fun.
Right.
This is not fun.
Right.
But I'm glad I did it, because on the flip side of of feeling and thinking all those things, you also have the experience of working through, okay, we're in this situation. So how are we going to finish this? Are we just going to walk off the side and say deuces, or are we going to press on through?
So did you make it to the runner's high? Did you make it through that wall or whatever they call it, the runners? Did you make it?
I hear those terms and everything. I basically had a conversation with myself that said, Lexie, you got yourself into this.
Mhm.
You're going to get yourself out. Stop thinking and just listen to music and do one foot in front of the other. So I guess technically I did, but it was a conscious, like, not even think about it anymore. There was no celebratory, oh, I pushed through this into this blissful space of, euphoria, whatever. None of that bullshit. I'm sorry, you can bleep me.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
I still have emotions about that, obviously.
Evidently. Whew. All right, so moving on. No. So another question has come to mind. I said I was going to ask that one and then move on to the final one, but I do have another one. So I want to go back to be the Delta. Because you said those were your 3 words that describe you. There's a difference in being and doing. So talk to me about being who Lexie is. What does that mean?
Great question, because that's one of the things as I was choosing that name that I really thought of, and I was very intentional in saying, be the Delta. So much of what we talk about, whether it's in the nonprofit space or even in other spaces, when you think about the work that you do, you are doing it to other people, especially within the nonprofit space, or you're giving it to other people. My choice in choosing that particular word, be the Delta, I believe that myself and anyone that I work with, you want to become the change you wish to see. And it starts with you. And it could be as simple as how you perceive those that you serve. It could be how you perceive your own life story. Because so many people that have some type of, passion towards nonprofit work have a personal story, whether it's they grew up in a situation where there was need or lack, or they saw someone that maybe needed something, or there's something that really kind of provoked that.
Sure.
And so what is the story? What is the emotion around that? And really helping to unpack and think about that so that you can become the change that you wish to see. And it's not from this place of, oh, those people, let me do this for them. Because I never want to be that type of person myself. I never want to facilitate that type of nonprofit that brings that into communities. I think it's important that you have the right intentions, the right mindset, the right culture around the work that you do. And part of that is being the change, not just bringing or doing change.
I'm going to let that sit for just a minute. I hope y'all heard that. If you didn't rewind and listen to it again, that was golden.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So, final question. Take as much time as you need.
Okay.
And that is, what is one word of wisdom that you would share with your younger self? Let's go back to that senior year of high school, and what would you tell senior year of high school Lexie?
Comparison is the enemy of joy. So stop comparing yourself to other people. Do your own journey, your own experiences. Let them be what they'll be. Enjoy it all, and it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
That's what I say. Stop comparing yourself.
Love
really,
that.
stop.
Comparison is the enemy of joy.
Yeah.
So y'all, do you see why I had Lexie on as a guest? Don't you just love her? Yeah, so she is the Chief Change Agent at her company.
Yep.
And that is Be the Delta. And she is the Community Engagement Officer or
Director of
Community Engagement, there we go, of the AT&T Byron Nelson. And is there anything that you would like to tell our audience about the Byron Nelson or anything that's coming up?
Sure. sure. If this is published before the tournament, so I'm also the lead on our Fairway 5K, fairway5k.com. It is the best 5K in North Texas. Go to the site. You'll see some of the video and images from last year's 5K. This year's is going to be bigger and better. And of course, the AT&T Byron Nelson, May 9th through 15th. We just sent a press release. We've got the world's number 1, world's number 2. Of course, our returning champion is coming to the tournament, KH Lee. Some big names are going to be there. It is going to be incredible. The website for the tournament is www.attbyronnelson.org. The Fairway 5K is Saturday, May 7th. Get your tickets, come out, be ready to have a good time.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
And y'all, thank you for tuning in today. And please tune in next week. We're going to have another phenomenal guest. And Lexie, as always, it's so great to see you. Thank you.
So good to see you.
Thank you.
If you'd like to contact Matt or know a fascinating person with an inspiring story that would make a great guest, reach out to the show at themattHiltonshow@gmail.com.